So,
welcome back, Quarantine Kitchen. Thanks for all the support last time. We decided to make another video, and we have lots of squash left over, so Mom's gonna tell you about that.
all right, so this squash, since we have more squash, we're going to do, it's essentially a veggie burger, but we call it a zucchini cutlet. You can use zucchini or any type of squash in it with your other vegetables. And we're gonna start by cutting up our squash. So the same as last time, we'll take the ends off. Ooh, this one's a little bit tougher. So hopefully your time inside is going well. We've been doing a lot of things while we've been inside. We haven't had it too bad with our quarantine anymore, but with the social distance, the terms seem to change so often that we don't really know. All right, so we've got our squash all cleaned up and peeled just like last time. And one of the things you might want to do, you can save some of the seeds from the squash, as long as they've got a little bit to them and they're not perfectly flat. Just give them a rinse and dry them, and then you can dry them on a piece of parchment, store them in an envelope, and then plant them when the weather's nice enough, if it ever is. So you don't have to buy your seeds. I save a lot of my squash seeds. I would recommend labeling them though, because even though I think I'm going to remember, I often forget. Okay, so we have grated our 3 cups of squash, and I have them measured into the bowl here. Again, it can be zucchini or any type of squash. And now we need a half cup of finely grated carrot. So we're going to just take and do our carrot now. There, we should be around half a cup now. That's approximately half a cup. Close enough. Now, the next thing we need to do is chop up our, I'm going to move my seeds out of the way now. Save them for later. We need to chop up our pepper. Now, the recipe calls for half a green and some green and some red pepper, but since I don't have any green pepper, it will be all red pepper today. And again, any color pepper you have. I like the red and the green because they give a nice, they show nicely and just make the food look a little more attractive. And then half a cup of finely chopped onion. So I have an onion here. As I said to Rick before we started, I'm actually a little more nervous with this video than the first one. The first one was just like a wing and a prayer, and because it turned out reasonable, now I feel there's a bit of pressure. Oh, an onion always makes me cry. 1 cup of grated cheddar, so not too much. Of course, Rick will have the recipe online available with this. Okay, now we've got that done. Now we need to put in, now the recipe originally called for some flour and some baking powder, but I don't use that. It calls for 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, so that's about 3/4 of a teaspoon. And it only calls for 1/8 of a teaspoon of pepper, but we do like our pepper, so I put closer to half. Now, it calls for Italian seasoning. I didn't happen to have any Italian seasoning, but I do have this Epicure pizza seasoning, which is very similar and smells pretty good. So about a teaspoon of that. Maybe a smidge more. Okay, so what I do for cracker crumbs is I usually just get my rolling pin out and put my crackers in a Ziploc and crush them. Any type of crackers works well. If you have different flavors of crackers, of course, they will add more flavor. And there's 1 cup. So we'll need a little bit more in there, but not a whole sleeve. Okay, so we're going to just keep mixing it here. Pretty soon I'll get my hands in it once the eggs are in. course, I will go and wash my hands again, especially with, I would be doing it anyway, but in particular, at this time, we're so conscious of keeping our hands very clean. Already that looks good and smells good, doesn't it, Rick?
Yeah.
Now this egg, as you can notice, is a blue-green egg. We get eggs from a friend of Amber's. This is a special breed of chicken that lays an egg in a blue-green color. Poultry that we don't seem to see as much anymore, because for any species, genetic diversity is important, and it's controlled by corporations, and you wonder where Rick gets it from. There tends to be less and less genetic diversity, and if there's a problem with that with those genetics, then you don't end up with anything that's viable. Just to get it done, then make about burger-sized ones. So now that we've got it all nicely together, oh yeah, that's a good consistency. Don't make them too thick. They'll bake nicer if they're not too thick. If you have a garden with a little bit of an abundance, or have a friend who has a garden with an abundance, these can be very inexpensive to make and freeze. Okay, we're just making our last cutlet, burger, whatever terminology you would choose to use. And then they will go in the oven for approximately half an hour at 350 degrees. Again, depends on your oven, and you can fry them up if you choose to. That's not, either way is fine. I just find that I like them baked a little better. There they are in the oven, and we will set our timer for half an hour. Cutlets appear to be done. I'm just going to turn my oven off. And oh, they smell amazing. And there's what they look like coming out of the oven. Take our other pan out as well. There we go. Now comes the major test. I like mine just as they are. Sometimes I
Rooster sauce.
Rick likes rooster sauce on everything.
That's true.
And that is pretty good.
Delicious.
So, thank you for tuning in to the second episode of Quarantine Kitchen. And if we are still working together well, perhaps we'll try another episode with something different than squash.
See you next time.
Bye-bye. Yeah, I would certainly make them with that squash again.
Yeah, it turned out really good.